So I just got a brand new monitor and I want to talk about it. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details when it comes to this brand new monitor. However, I will go into some detail here so you can get kind of an idea of what I'm working with. I will be making a whole separate video in the future going into more detail about it, so stay tuned to that. But the monitor I did decide to go with was actually a 1440p 27-inch VRR enabled, HDR enabled monitor as well. And those are just some of the specs here when it comes to this thing. And it's actually a pretty substantial upgrade over what I previously owned. I'm actually really surprised that my old monitor is still working, considering my old one is actually 13 years old and it has a lot of abuse on it, and it's pretty much been used almost every day. So it's actually pretty surprising that it's working after 13 years of long usage, and it's still got a long time to go if you ask me. Right now, I don't think it's going to break anytime soon. I mean, knock on wood, it may break tomorrow, but I don't have any plans to really use it. Most likely what I'm going to end up doing here is going to actually use it as like a second display, or just keep it as a backup display to my setup now, because it is still a very good working monitor. There is some things about my old one I did not like. Like, for instance, it's only a 23-inch display, which is not a big deal considering some people now still only game at 24 inches. And then, of course, it has some of the biggest bezels of any monitor out there. They're very thick for today's standards. And then it is also a heavy monitor, which is also not a big deal because most of the time you're not moving the monitor around. But if you ever do want to move my old one around, you can definitely notice how heavy it is, especially compared to some of the newer monitors out there. And it's also very thick as well. And then it also has some of the worst glare you can ever get on a monitor. And that really is a big deal to me, glare, because glare really kills the experience when it comes to anything you're doing on a monitor, whether you're using a computer, whether you're watching videos, whether you're just actually playing games on it. Glare does kill it for me, and the glare on the old one was uncontrollable, so much so you couldn't do anything to stop the glare. Glare was always there unless you pretty much turned off all the lights, but again, you don't always have that luxury of turning off all your lights because sometimes you just can't do that. So it was unfortunate that the glare on that monitor was pretty much uncontrollable, and it only had one port on it, one HDMI port, so it wasn't the greatest one as well. So I'm actually glad that I actually upgraded. The main reason, and actually the only reason I actually decided to upgrade, was the fact that I found a really good deal right now on some monitors, and I was like, my monitor is a little bit older. I don't really need to update it if you ask me, because I'm a person who still thinks 1080p is still fine for today's standards. Sure, it is a little bit outdated compared to other monitors with 1440p displays and of course 4K displays as well. So I was like, yeah, I don't need to upgrade it, but since there's a really good deal, I cannot pass on this deal. And I do play games a lot, and that's primarily what I do with my monitors. So I was like, yeah, it's time for an upgrade after 13 years, and this one's not that expensive at all to justify getting a whole brand new one. So that's actually what I ended up doing, getting a whole brand new one, and I'm pretty much happy with it. I've had it now for about 4 days now, and I've been really putting it through its paces when it actually comes to this monitor. And I've actually been having a lot of thoughts in my head. Should I return it? Should I not return it? Because the nice thing is, with the one I have, they actually have a really good return policy, considering we're already around the holiday season at the time of this recording, and they give me all the way up until February of 2024 to return this thing. And that's actually a pretty amazing deal. Alongside that, they automatically give me a 4-year warranty out the gate, which is also pretty awesome. But yeah, overall, I'm still pretty happy about it. The only thing I was really unsure is when it comes to this one was oh, I did also forget to mention, it is, instead of my old one being 60 hertz, this one is actually a 170 hertz monitor. I did forget to mention that. I don't know why that slipped my mind, since I do play a lot of games on this thing. But the only thing I was really unsure of when it comes to this one was the fact that I was unsure if 27 inches was the right size. That's kind of the middle ground. I was also unsure, should I go 4K or only 1440p. Either way, it's going to be an upgrade over my pre-existing monitor, and I actually decided to settle on a 1440p 1080p display, and for the price and everything, it's still probably the best option. You don't necessarily need the greatest resolution and things like that, because you do have to realize as well, we're talking about really small screen sizes. We're not talking like 60-inch here. We're talking like 24-inch, 27-inch, 32 inches, which most monitors top out at around 32 inches. So yeah, a lot of the time with a lot of these newer resolutions, like anything higher than 1080p, it will look very crispy. And even if 4K does look more noticeable, and you could notice it, which I immediately noticed the difference from 1080p to 1440p without a doubt. It was so much better. I instantly noticed it. But even if 4K was more substantially noticeable over my 1080p display or even 1440p, it wouldn't matter, because like the old saying goes, you can't miss what you never had. And I never actually used a display at 4K resolution at those smaller screen sizes. I've only ever used 4K on like a big 60-inch TV, so take that for what it is. But like I said, I did notice the difference between 1080p and 1440p right away. And I had some other concerns as well upgrading, because some people out there were like, yeah, if you use a 1440p display, a lot of things that are only 1080p resolution, full HD won't look great on a monitor that's 1440p, because things don't scale right. That's what some people were saying, and some people were saying 1080p really looks like garbage. But in my personal opinion, I've also tested a lot of 1080p content, whether it's playing games on, like for instance, the Nintendo Switch, whether it's also watching movies or TV shows that are only recorded in 1080p, or watching YouTube videos, or only watching streams that a lot of people still only stream at a maximum of 1080p. I don't think 1080p is bad on 1440p. I mean, there is some number of different things to take in consideration: what they're actually filming, the actual videos with, the quality of their content, and then also the quality of your 1440p display as well. I did forget to mention again that I did end up going with a standard 16:9 aspect ratio instead of a widescreen monitor, or what do you call it, ultra wide. I didn't go with an ultra wide because I just didn't think I needed it, and it would cost me much more to actually get an ultra wide at that resolution. And then on top of that, I don't think I have desk space for ultra wide monitor as well. But yeah, 1080p content definitely looks good on my monitor. I don't know what world where people think 1080p looks bad on 1440p display. Is it because they're watching bad 1080p content, or are they watching it on a bad 1440p display? I don't know what the case is here, but 1080p looks totally acceptable. Can you notice the difference? Yes, I can notice it. It looks slightly a little bit off compared to the 1440p resolution that I'm currently using it at to play video games, but it's not bad at all, and I wouldn't really bat an eye at lower resolution content. Maybe if it was like 480p up to like 720p, or a little bit less than 1080p content, then maybe that's where I would notice the downgrade in fidelity and clearness of my monitor screen. But no, that's actually not an actual thing as well. When it comes to my monitor, it also supports HDR, and the HDR quality of this monitor, unfortunately, is not the greatest, just due to the fact that on my display, I'm only getting about 300 nits max brightness, which is not bad at all, but it's not true HDR. Normally, you want higher peak nits when it comes to brightness of a display to get true HDR content. So HDR content on my monitor is pretty much going to be fake, if you ask me, just because it's not bright enough. But it does get bright enough for normal gaming. And the nice thing is, I didn't know when I bought my display, I didn't know it was actually going to be a matte finish, which I'm totally a big fan of. I tried it in every situation you can possibly try. I tried it with the sun beaming in, broad daylight. I've also tried it with a light beaming down on it from my ceiling. I've also tried a combination of the light beaming down heavily. I've also tried it with another light beaming on it. I've also tried it with the sun and the actual lights of the room beaming. I tried it at number of different brightnesses, number of different lighting configurations in my room, and I can tell you without a doubt there's zero glare on this monitor. And I also love the fact as well, not only is there zero glare, unlike my other monitor, there's zero bezel on this. There may be a slight bezel, but it's so unnoticeable. It's not a big deal. It's not one of those chunky boys like my old monitor, which pretty much looks outdated and not modern. I am glad you're getting more screen here. Not only am I going up from 23 inches, I'm actually going up to 27 inches, and I'm actually getting a smaller bezel. So overall, it's really nice. when it actually comes to that. I actually really love the 27 inches. Would I love 32 inches, which a lot of monitors max out at 32 inches for a lot of them? I don't know if I would love 32 inches. That's not really a fair thing to say if I would love it or hate it, because I never used a 32-inch monitor on a desk. But right now, I think 27 for me is totally fine, and I really don't feel like I really do need a bigger screen size. And a lot of people who say they play things like competitive games, especially competitive shooters, say they like smaller screens. I know some people that still play at that old 24-inch screen size at 1080p still, believe it or not. And a lot of people said the sweet spot is still 27 inches at 1440p. And where I sit back from the monitor and the games I play and things like that, it looks very crispy to me, and I have no major complaints. And it's definitely an upgrade, not just in the fidelity of the screen, the size of the screen, the resolution, but also the color. The colors of the screen definitely look better than my old 1080p display, without a doubt. I don't know what it's using there, but it is slightly better in that aspect as well. I actually love this monitor so much, I don't even want to go back to a TV to actually play my games. I just think there's something really personal to actually sit down in front of a desk with a monitor close to your face. That does feel personal. It feels like it's more engaging and things like that. I know everyone will make a whole bunch of different cases to why you should use a monitor versus a TV and why you should use a TV versus a monitor. A lot of people will actually tell you the reason they use a TV is because, especially if they're on consoles, it's going to be a little bit more harder if you're on PC gaming. Most likely, if you're on PC gaming, of course, you're going to be using a monitor. You're not going to be using a TV, because how can you really use a TV like in a living room with a computer? Because you would have to set up a keyboard and mouse, and it would be a little bit more clunkier. But at least for console gamers, some people say they love TVs more because they're like, yeah, it's much more immersive, especially if you play a lot of story-driven games with a lot of cutscenes, and they're very immersive and things like that. And I could definitely see that as well. And I could still go back to a TV. It's not the end of the world here not to go back to a traditional TV, but there is definitely something that's really special about being on a monitor up close to your face. And I am a person that only uses headphones as well. I'm not really a fan of using speakers when it comes to gaming, but that's also because I play a lot of competitive games and I really want to concentrate on the action that's going on the screen, and it just feels much more personal. Even if I'm playing like a story-driven game, I would rather just use headphones because I feel like I'm really immersed and I'm concentrating more better off than I would be with speakers. But I know some people do like surround sound systems, and there is something to be said about that experience as well, because that is a really good experience. And for the longest time too, I was a person that loved switching between monitors and TVs as my general setup, especially since I play a lot of console gaming, whether it's my Nintendo Switch or whether it's my Series X and previous generations like my PS4. I did actually end up switching from TV to monitor because the experiences are totally different. Sometimes it's nice to be in a living room with a big screen TV with a really nice sound setup, and then sometimes it's nice to be on a desk really close up to a monitor, really concentrating on the action there. So it's nice to have both options. If you can have both options, even if you have to move your consoles around to different setups, sometimes there's just something really nice about that. And now I actually want to talk about the hertz of the screen and frames per second, because I've been using 60 for pretty much ever at this point, and considering most generations besides the current generation never supported anything higher than 60 frames per second, it wasn't really a big deal for gaming anyway. And for TV and movie shows, it didn't matter. But let me tell you, I do play some games that do actually support higher resolution, and I do also play some PC games as well, and I can easily get the full 170 hertz out of this monitor. And let me tell you, for me personally, it is a really big night and day difference compared to 60 hertz when it comes to frames per second. I know some people can't tell the difference. I've heard that story many times. Some people say they don't see the difference, but I can easily see the difference. It may also depend on what type of game you're playing, because different type of games, the frame rates will be more noticeable than other games, and depending on how the developer makes the game, depending on the graphical style of the game, there's just a lot of different things that take into account. Can you notice frames or can you not notice frames? Of course, there is a certain point to where it will be too laggy, like anything under 30. I think most people can agree they can notice the frames for sure. But yeah, I definitely noticed it. It's so noticeable that I actually went back to 60 hertz, and in the same types of games that I play a lot of FPS shooters, and going back to 60 hertz or 60 frames per second in FPS shooters, that's where things start to get very noticeably choppy. Is it an experience I can easily go back to? Yes, I can easily go back to it. Some people are like, yeah, I could never go back to 60 hertz. I'm used to 240 frames, which some monitors even support nowadays. Even 500 hertz, some monitors support, but not every game supports that. But yes, I can go back to 60, considering some games you have to play at lower frames per second. Like, for instance, if you're on the Nintendo Switch, a lot of games only max out at 60. That's the highest you can go. And then most games don't even play at 60 on the Switch. And then, of course, even with current gen consoles like the PS5 and the Series X, you have to play games at those 60 frames per second in a lot of situations. And believe it or not, there's still games that still only play at 30 frames per second because, let's face it, these games are just still too demanding, especially on the console side. So yeah, you pretty much have to get used to 60. And I don't think some genres are that bad at playing at 60. And even if I'm playing the same genre like shooters and going back to 60, it just takes a little bit to adjust back to 60 if I have to go back to 60. But it is nice, at least a lot of the games that I'm personally playing on current gen hardware and on on current gen consoles and on the PC, I can actually play in higher frames per second, which is actually nice. It's just so nice playing these games in 1440p and having the motion being way more smoother and way more responsive than it ever did. Also, on top of that, my monitor does support those fast 1 millisecond response times, which is very nice and very awesome. Overall, I'm really happy with my monitor. There's only two things I don't like about this one that I actually got, which is kind of a bummer. One is the fact that the speakers are garbage on this. I wish they just wouldn't put speakers at all to keep the cost down, because it does probably cost some manufacturing to put these speakers on here. And anyone with a normal working functioning brain, unfortunately, can notice the speakers being bad. They're even worse than a cheap tablet. They're even worse than a smartphone, any smartphone on the market, even from like the past 5 and 6 years. They're just ultimately garbage, without a doubt. They're very tinny. They're very soft, even at 100. Luckily, my monitor does have a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, so I could try to hook up some speakers with 3.5 millimeter or run a headphone, but I am running headphones regardless, because I'm just a person, again, that does like headphones. So I don't care if there's no speaker or the speakers are garbage. I will 100% of the time use headphones, because I have a really nice pair of headphones that I love gaming with. And you have to remember as well, a lot of time I am talking to people when I'm playing games, so it's kind of like I need that headset around anyway to have that all-in-one headset and microphone in the same contraption anyway, so it only makes sense as well. And then one bad thing about my monitor is the fact that there is no adjustment, zero adjustment. It's stuck in the adjustment that you put it on the stand. Luckily, the stand is nice quality, but it is a really bad stand, because you can't do any adjustment. Unlike my older monitor, you could tilt it in up or down, whichever way you want it, depending on your height of your desk, or depending on if you wanted to look down on it and things like that. But you can't do it with my brand new monitor. Luckily, that's not going to be an issue, because you can buy a monitor arm or a monitor arm later if you want to clamp one on a desk, which is actually really nice. It does have those, of course. It doesn't include one in the box, but they're not too high if I really wanted to go with one. And I'm actually thinking I kind of do want to go with a monitor arm or a monitor stand, a monitor arm, I mean, because the thing is, I really do like those different angles you can actually prop your monitor at, or swivel your monitor at, if you want it more closer to your face, or if you want it back a little more, or if you want it a little bit more higher or a little bit more lower for your situation. And not only that, monitor arms normally look really sick on a desk. If you ask me, it clears your desk off, it takes up less space, and ultimately they just look badass on a desk, just being able to like float above the desk. There's just something really, really cool about it. So most likely I'll be getting one of those sometime soon, in the near future, pretty soon actually, because I really want one. The stand that comes with it, it's not bad or anything, and it's not ugly. It's not like it's not durable. It's metal. It's just the fact that it doesn't have any adjustment really bums me out. I really wish it had some adjustment, but I guess I have to take some trade-offs here, considering that this monitor was a really awesome deal, honestly. And again, stay tuned to the channel, because I will be doing an updated video in the near future after I did some more testing on this monitor to really put it through its paces. And I'll also be showing you my old monitor and comparing it and things like that, to show you what I was actually coming from. But I'm actually very excited for this thing, and I use this again with everything in the book pretty much. I've used it with my Nintendo Switch, I've used it with my Series X, I've also watched movies on here, TV shows on here, videos from YouTube. I've also used it with a gaming PC, I've used it with a laptop, I've used it with a number of different devices, and so far I'm actually really happy with the quality. And I really wish I would have upgraded sooner rather than later, just because I didn't know how much I was actually missing out. Just going up from 23 inches up to 27 inches makes a pretty substantial difference in my opinion. Plus that 1440p 170 hertz display with HDR and with VRR as well, which the news consoles actually support as well, like the Series X and S, which is actually pretty awesome as well. And yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap up this video. I've actually been talking way too long in this video, and I want to cut the video here just talking about this thing. But again, stay tuned to the channel. And yeah, that's pretty much going to be it. For me, I'm actually really happy with my purchase. There's nothing else I can really say about this monitor. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne signing out.